Ladies and gentlemen, perhaps the reason you keep finding yourself in the same burning house is that you have mistaken the heat for a home. We often speak of love as a journey, But for many of us, it feels more like a labyrinth. We enter through a new door, greeted by a new face and the promise of a different story. Yet as the weeks turn into months, the scenery begins to look hauntingly familiar. We recognize the way they pull away, the way we begin to plead, and the way the foundation starts to crack in the exact same places it did before. This is the architecture of heartbreak, a structure built not from our conscious desires, but from the invisible blueprints of our past. Reflectively, there is a profound, almost poetic cruelty in the way the human heart operates. We claim to seek happiness, right? Yet we often bypass the people who offer us stability and peace, finding them boring or missing a spark. Emphatically, instead, we are drawn toward the storm. We find ourselves trapped in a cycle of emotional déjà vu, repeating the same mistakes with different people, wondering why the universe keeps handing us the same painful lesson. With a hint of challenge, but what if it isn't the universe? What if the spark we chase is actually the friction of an old wound being rubbed raw? Ladies and gentlemen, we are here to explore the most unsettling question of the human experience. Why does our heart so often choose what our head knows will destroy us? To understand why we keep falling for the same person in different bodies, we must first look at the foundation of the house we've been building. We must understand that we don't always fall for who we want. We fall for what we think we deserve. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a specific type of exhaustion that, honestly, doesn't go away with sleep. Measured, it is the fatigue of the soul when it realizes it has been here before. We find ourselves in a new season of life, perhaps with a different partner under a different sun, staring into a pair of eyes we've never seen. Yet the words coming out of their mouth feel like a script we've already memorized. It is the recurring nightmare of the heart, the realization that you have found the same toxic traits, merely wearing a different face. Why does the soul which cries out for peace so often find itself wandering back into the storm? You see, this is what we call the comfort of familial chaos. For many of us, a stable, healthy love feels like a foreign language, one we simply never learn to speak. Peace feels like boredom, right? Respect feels like indifference. We have been conditioned to believe that if there is no friction, there is no fire. And if there is no fire, there is no love. We tell ourselves we want happiness, yet we consistently invite the very people who will dismantle it. We are like architects who claim to want a sturdy home, yet we keep building on the edge of a crumbling cliff because, well, we've grown to love the view of the fall. You aren't necessarily attracted to the pain, ladies and gentlemen. You are attracted to the predictability. In the chaos, you know exactly who you are expected to be. You know your role. You are the fixer, the martyr, or the chaser. But in the calm, you are forced to face the silence of your own company. And for many, that is the most terrifying prospect of all. We have become experts at recognizing the spark, but we rarely stop to ask if that spark is the beginning of a light or the beginning of a house fire. But if we recognize the pattern, why can't we just stop? Why does the mind choose a known misery over an unknown joy? The answer lies in a hidden mechanism of our subconscious, a survival tactic that has simply overstayed its welcome. To understand why we are so magnetically drawn to our own undoing, we have to look at the invisible blueprints we've been carrying since the very beginning. Because the truth is, the person you keep falling for isn't a stranger at all. They are a mirror of someone you've known your entire life. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to talk about what psychologists call the repetition compulsion. Softly, with a sense of wonder, concept that sounds almost paradoxical at first. You see, it suggests that we are biologically wired to gravitate toward what is familiar, even when that familiarity is synonymous with pain. Thoughtfully, slow-paced. The human brain is an efficiency machine. It craves patterns, It builds a map of the world in our earliest years based on our caregivers, and it spends the rest of our lives trying to navigate using that same outdated map. When you find yourself magnetically drawn to someone who makes you feel ignored, misunderstood, or emotionally starved, it is rarely a coincidence. It is your subconscious mind attempting to solve an old equation using new variables. Empathetic, leaning in. You see, you aren't actually falling for the person standing in front of you, right? You are falling for the opportunity to finally win a battle you lost in your past. It is an unconscious attempt to go back in time, to take that cold, distant figure from your childhood and finally make them love you. You are projecting the image of a parent or an early guardian onto a modern partner, hoping that if you just love them hard enough or become perfect enough, they will transform into the version of themselves that you always needed. Philosophical, melancholic. It is a beautiful, tragic irony. We chase the very neglect we fear, all in the desperate hope that this time, the ending will be different. We treat our partners like theater sets, hoping to rewrite the script of our own history. Firmly, with gravitas. But the tragedy, ladies and gentlemen, is that you cannot heal a wound by poking at it with the same sharp object that created it in the first place. You are caught in a cycle where the subconscious mind views a familiar suffering as safer than an unknown joy, simply because the unknown is, by definition, unpredictable, introspective, quiet. But here is where it gets complicated, because even when we realize we are trapped in this loop, we find ourselves unable to walk away. It feels as if there is a hidden hand pulling the strings, keeping us tethered to the very dynamics that leave us hollow. And that leads us to a terrifying question. If we know the pattern is toxic, why does our nervous system register the familiar pain as home? But that's not even the craziest part, because the true origin of this cycle goes even deeper into the architecture of your subconscious than you might suspect. Ladies and gentlemen, to break this cycle, we must stop operating on autopilot and begin what I call conscious auditing. If you really want to change the destination of your relationships, you have to audit the blueprint you've been using to build them. It is as simple and as difficult as that. Slowly, take a moment, honestly, and list the 3 most consistent negative traits of your past partners. Be brutal with your objectivity. Often, you see, we find that we aren't choosing different people at all. We are simply choosing different faces for the same psychological script.
When you meet someone new and feel that instant, magnetic spark, that pull that feels like destiny, pause. In the realm of psychology, that spark is frequently not a sign of compatibility. Instead, it is often just the friction of 2 old wounds rubbing together. It is your subconscious recognizing a familiar trauma, a signal that you have finally found a stage upon which to reenact your past. We must learn to pivot our criteria, valuing emotional safety over the intoxicating rush of intensity. In our modern landscape, we have been conditioned, quite wrongly, I think, to mistake anxiety for passion. Consequently, when we encounter a person who is truly consistent, kind, and reliable, we often, label them as boring. If you find yourself using that word, boring, to describe a healthy partner, I want you to sit with that sensation. Do not run from it. That boredom is actually the sound of peace. It is the absence of chaos. You must consciously train your nervous system to accept the silence of safety. Because for a long time, your body has only known how to regulate itself in the presence of instability. However, there is a hidden danger in this process. Even when you believe you are finally choosing a healthier path, there is a specific, invisible mechanism that tries to pull you back towards your old patterns. A mechanism that operates entirely beneath the surface of your conscious mind. But that is a matter of neurobiology that we are only just beginning to map out. And the truth about how your brain resists this transformation might actually surprise you. Ladies and gentlemen, thoughtfully, we have spent our time here dissecting the architecture of your past, peeling back the layers of why you find yourself standing in the doorway of a burning house time and time again, waiting for a savior who never arrives. Softly. But the final realization, the one that truly matters, is the most liberating of all. You do not need to wait for the fire to extinguish itself, nor do you need to wait for someone else to carry you out. Firmly. You are not just the victim of the flames, you are the architect of your own peace. Reflective. When you finally turn your back on that burning structure, you aren't leaving behind a part of yourself. You are reclaiming the home that has been vacant for far too long, your own consciousness. You see, the cycle of choosing the same painful dynamic is often a subconscious attempt to heal an old wound by forcing a new partner to play the role of a past ghost, right? But healing, real healing, cannot happen in the very environment that caused the injury. Slower pace. Measured. To reclaim your home is to accept the silence that follows the fire. It is to sit in the quiet of a life no longer fueled by chaos or emotional volatility. Softly. It is the realization that your value is not a commodity to be traded for someone else's validation. When you stop looking for the familiar sting of past trauma in the eyes of a new face, you begin to see the world as it actually is, rather than how your pain needs it to be. You are the only person who has been there for every single one of your heartbreaks, and you are the only one who will be there for every one of your triumphs. The path ahead is not about finding someone to complete you. It is about becoming so fundamentally whole that you no longer require a storm to feel alive. We invite you to continue this journey of deep self-decoding here at Mindscapes Explored. If this exploration of your own internal landscape resonated with you, I encourage you to subscribe to our community. We are here to navigate the complexities of the human experience together, one thought at a time. Before you go, I want to leave you with a question. What is the one pattern you are finally ready to walk away from today? Share your realizations in the comments below. Your perspective might be the very spark that lights the way for someone else struggling to find the exit. Thank you for walking this path with us. Stay mindful and stay present.